When we begin by saying, "Long live the King," we are not using a mere slogan of loyalty like subjects might shout toward a human monarch. We are confessing something infinitely greater. We are confessing that Christ is the eternal King, reigning before time began, reigning now, and reigning forever. His throne is not subject to elections or the rise and fall of empires. He is not waiting to be crowned. He does not fear the loss of power. His rule is not sustained by human approval, nor is it threatened by human rebellion. To declare that Christ is King is to acknowledge the unshakable reality that He is the center of all existence, the anchor of creation, and the rightful ruler of every life in this room. And yet, this is precisely where we begin to see the tension. Because when we think of kingship, we think of dominance, force, and absolute control. We think of armies marching, subjects bowing, wealth being displayed, and power being exercised through fear. But the kingship of Christ is utterly different. He is the King who does not conquer by the sword, but by sacrifice. He does not compel allegiance through terror, but invites obedience through love. His crown was not first made of gold, but of thorns. His throne was not first set in heaven, but lifted up on a wooden cross. And this radically transforms our understanding of what it means to serve Him. Many of us, if we are honest, want a king who can give us immediate security, visible success, and tangible proof of power. We want a king who makes life easier, who fights our battles in ways we can see, who rewards us with blessings that satisfy our temporal desires. But Christ, the eternal King, calls us to something far deeper. He reminds us that His kingdom is not of this world. And that is not a poetic way of saying later. It is a philosophical and spiritual reality that should shatter our illusions. To live under His reign is to reorder our entire worldview. To understand that power is not measured by domination but by holiness, that greatness is not found in being served but in serving, that glory is revealed not in self-promotion but in self-denial. When you say, "Long live the King," do you understand what you are saying? You are not asking Christ to rule longer, because His reign does not depend on your permission. You are declaring a truth that stands whether you acknowledge it or not, that He lives, He rules, He reigns. The question is not whether Christ is King, but whether you and I will bow to Him. Will our lives align with His reign, or will we continue building little kingdoms of self that will crumble into dust? There is a psychological depth to this reality as well, because when you acknowledge Christ as King, you are confronted with the end of autonomy, and that is frightening for the human heart. From the moment we are born, we crave control. We want to sit on the throne of our own lives, to call the shots, to define good and evil according to our preferences. But Christ as King shatters that illusion. He calls us off the throne. He says, "You are not the ruler here," and though our pride resists, our souls secretly long for this surrender. Because deep down, we know we cannot carry the weight of our own sovereignty. We know the kingdoms we build, whether of career, status, pleasure, or reputation, cannot hold us up in the end. They collapse under the weight of suffering, failure, and ultimately death. But the reign of Christ offers something this world cannot: an eternal kingdom that cannot be shaken, a rule that will not be corrupted, and a king who will never betray His people. Philosophically, this raises the most important question. If Christ is King, then every other claim to authority is temporary, borrowed, and accountable to Him. Governments rise and fall, leaders come and go, ideologies burn bright for a time and then fade into the ashes of history. But Christ remains. The weight of this should sober us, because it means that every decision we make is not simply a matter of personal preference or cultural trends. It is a matter of allegiance. Every word, every thought, every action reveals whether we are living as though Christ truly reigns or as though we remain loyal to the passing kings of this age. And so this first truth must be pressed into your heart. Christ is not waiting to be enthroned. He already reigns. He reigns over creation, He reigns over nations, He reigns over history, and He must reign over you. The gospel is not simply an invitation to believe in forgiveness. It is a call to bend the knee. To confess that Jesus is Lord is to abandon the illusion of your own sovereignty and to live daily in the reality of His. So when we cry out, "Long live the King," we are not merely wishing Christ a prosperous reign. We are declaring the only reality that endures, that Christ is King and His reign has no end. The only question left is this: will your life testify to that reign, or will it stand as rebellion against it? Because one day, whether in joy or in dread, every knee will bow and every tongue will confess that Jesus Christ is Lord. Better to bow now in love than later in terror. Long live the King. If Christ is indeed the eternal King, then the most natural response of the human heart should be surrender. Yet it is here that we stumble most often. We want the blessings of the King without bowing to His authority. We want the protection of His reign without the humility of obedience. But the truth is this: a life devoted to Christ is not a life of partial allegiance. It is not about adding Him as an accessory to your plans or sprinkling a little bit of religion on top of a self-directed existence. No, it is about a complete exchange, the crown of self for the crown of obedience. Now, obedience in our modern world is a word often met with resistance. It sounds like oppression, like the loss of freedom, like the crushing of individuality. And yet the paradox of the gospel is that obedience to Christ is not bondage, but liberation. Why? Because every human being already serves a master. You may think you are free, but you are not. You are either ruled by Christ, or you are ruled by your desires, your pride, your fears, and ultimately by sin itself. To obey Christ is not to lose freedom. It is to finally be free from the tyranny of self and sin. Consider how psychology describes the human condition. We are constantly torn between impulses. One part of us longs for significance, another for pleasure, another for security, another for approval. And so we are pulled in 1,000 directions, slaves to whatever desire screams loudest at the moment. The result is a restless, fragmented soul. But Christ as King calls us to lay down those conflicting masters and bow to Him alone. His lordship unifies the divided self. It brings coherence to our desires, direction to our wandering, and peace to our inner war. True obedience to Christ is not the end of selfhood, but the restoration of it. But make no mistake, surrendering to Christ is costly. It means dethroning yourself. It means acknowledging that your life is not your own. Your decisions are not ultimately yours to make. Your dreams and ambitions must be laid at His feet. This is why Jesus said that anyone who wishes to follow Him must deny himself, take up his cross, and follow. The imagery is not casual, it is radical. To follow the King means to die to self. And yet in that death, you find true life. Think of the countless men and women throughout history who tried to build their own kingdoms. The powerful, the wealthy, the famous. They commanded armies, they possessed treasures, they shaped cultures. And yet, one by one, their crowns fell, their thrones crumbled, their names faded into obscurity, remembered only as footnotes in history books. But those who laid down their lives in obedience to Christ, humble men and women unknown to the world, shine with eternal significance. They exchanged temporary crowns for a lasting one. The challenge is that surrender is not a one-time act, but a daily decision. Every morning you must rise and decide again, whose kingdom will I serve today? Will I wear the crown of self, clinging to my plans, my control, my desires? Or will I lay that crown down before the feet of Christ, saying, not my will, but yours be done in? This is the test of obedience, not in grand gestures, but in the ordinary details of life. How you speak, how you work, how you respond when wronged, how you choose when no one is watching. These reveal whether you are truly surrendered to the King. Philosophically, we must also confront the illusion of autonomy. Modern thought exalts the individual as sovereign, the self as ultimate authority. Be true to yourself. We are told, follow your heart, live your truth. But here lies the problem. The self is a broken compass. The heart is deceitful, not trustworthy. The truth within us is corrupted by sin. If you enthrone yourself as king, you condemn yourself to ruin. But when you surrender to Christ, you align yourself with the true source of wisdom, goodness, and truth. He is not a tyrant who robs you of identity. He is the creator who restores your humanity. And yet many hesitate. They stand at the threshold, wanting to keep one foot in their own kingdom and one foot in His. But you cannot serve two masters. Partial surrender is no surrender at all. Christ does not accept divided allegiance. He is not content to be a consultant in your life. He is king and He demands the throne. So the question confronts each of us with urgency: whose crown are you wearing today? The crown of self that will one day be stripped from your head and cast into the dust? Or the crown of obedience laid at the feet of Christ that will one day be exchanged for the crown of life? Do not deceive yourself. Neutrality is impossible. You are serving someone. The only question is whether the one you serve will lead you to life or to death. Christ alone is worthy of your allegiance, for He is the King who gave Himself for you. So let us not hesitate, let us not delay, let us not cling to our fragile crowns. Lay them down before the throne of Christ, and in obedience find the freedom, the peace, and the life you have been longing for all along. For only in surrender to Him can you truly live. If Christ is the eternal King, and if devotion to Him is marked by surrender, then the natural question becomes, what will it cost me? Because every allegiance has a price. And we must be honest here. There is no such thing as following Christ without cost. The moment you confess Him as Lord, you place yourself in direct contrast with the world. And the world does not take kindly to rivals. To declare your loyalty to the King of Kings is to guarantee that you will face resistance, misunderstanding, and trial. The crown of obedience, as we said, is glorious, but it is not cheap. This is where many stumble, because they expect that serving Christ will lead to unbroken ease and comfort. They imagine that loyalty to the King will shield them from suffering, that it will purchase a smooth life. But Christ never promised that. In fact, He promised the opposite. He said that those who follow Him will be hated by the world, that they will face persecution, that they will share in His sufferings. The path of discipleship is not padded with luxury, but lined with hardship. And yet, and here is the paradox, it is in those trials that our allegiance shines the brightest. Think for a moment about the nature of loyalty. What does it mean to be faithful? If I remain committed to someone only when it is easy, is that true faithfulness? If I serve Christ only when He gives me what I want, am I truly devoted? No, loyalty is proven when the storm rages, when the fire burns, when the cost is high. That is when the authenticity of faith is revealed. You see, anyone can sing, "Long live the King," when the sun is shining. But the true subject sings it when the night falls, when the body is weary, when the heart is breaking, when the world is against him. Psychologically, this truth is profound. Because human beings are naturally drawn to comfort and safety, we avoid pain at all costs. But devotion to Christ requires us to endure discomfort for the sake of a higher allegiance. Trials expose what we truly value. If your faith collapses when tested, then it was never anchored in the King. It was anchored in the benefits you hope to receive from Him. But if your faith endures, if you cling to Christ when everything else is stripped away, then your devotion is real. In fact, suffering often purifies devotion, burning away selfish motives and exposing whether Christ Himself is enough. Philosophically, this confronts us with the nature of truth. If Christ is truly the eternal King, then His reign is not invalidated by my suffering. His throne is not threatened by my pain. But if I walk away from Him when life becomes hard, then I reveal that my allegiance was never to the King Himself, but to what I thought the King could give me. That is not devotion. It is self-interest. The cost of allegiance forces us to ask, do I love Christ for who He is, or only for what He provides? History bears witness to this. The early church grew not because it avoided hardship, but because it embraced it. Men and women who confessed Christ as King were imprisoned, tortured, cast to lions, burned at the stake. And yet, they would not renounce their allegiance. Why? Because they knew that the King who suffered for them was worthy of their suffering for Him. They knew that no trial, no pain, no loss could rob them of the eternal crown promised by their Lord. Their devotion was not theoretical, it was tested in fire, and so it must be with us. Your trials may not look like theirs, but they will come. You will face rejection from friends or family who do not understand your allegiance to Christ. You will face ridicule in a culture that mocks devotion to God. You may lose opportunities, influence, or comfort because of your obedience, and in those moments you will be tempted to compromise, to quiet your devotion, to blend in. But hear me clearly. The measure of your allegiance is not in what you proclaim when life is easy, but in what you endure when it costs you everything. Do not fear this cost, because in the very place where you feel weakest, the King reveals His strength. In the place where you feel most abandoned, the King proves His faithfulness. Trials are not the absence of His reign. They are the arena where His reign is displayed most clearly. When the world sees a believer endure suffering with unwavering devotion, they see a testimony more powerful than any sermon. They see a life that declares Christ is worthy, no matter the cost. So let us not deceive ourselves with a comfortable Christianity. The crown of obedience is not made of velvet, but of thorns. Allegiance to Christ is costly, and it will demand everything of you. But it is in the fire that devotion is purified, and it is through trial that faith is proven. The question is simple yet searching: when your loyalty to Christ costs you something, your reputation, your comfort, even your life, will you still bow before Him and say, "Long live the King"? Because allegiance that cannot endure trials is no allegiance at all. But allegiance that endures will one day be rewarded with a crown that will never fade. Faithfulness in the fire is the mark of true devotion. If Christ is the eternal King, if devotion to Him is marked by surrender, and if that allegiance must endure through trial, then we must ask what lies at the end of it all. What is the outcome of a life lived under His reign? Because the truth is, no sacrifice is sustainable without hope. No one willingly lays down their life unless they believe something greater will be gained. And this is where the promise of the King carries us forward. The crown that He offers is not a temporary one. The glory He gives His people does not tarnish, does not fade, and cannot be stolen. The reward of devotion to Christ is nothing less than eternal life in His kingdom, where every sorrow is undone and every tear wiped away. You see, every earthly kingdom promises rewards, but they are always fleeting. The applause of people fades quickly. Wealth slips through our hands. Achievements are forgotten. Even the most magnificent crowns of this world end up locked in museum glass cases, relics of rulers long buried in the dust. And yet Christ offers something that cannot be reduced to memory. He offers Himself. He offers a kingdom that cannot be shaken, a fellowship that cannot be broken, and a joy that cannot be stolen. The hope of the Christian is not simply survival in this world, but eternal union with the King in the world to come. Psychologically, hope is what sustains the soul in hardship. Without it, we collapse under the weight of suffering. But here is the difference: human hope is often no more than wishful thinking, fragile dreams that circumstances can shatter. Christian hope, however, is not rooted in speculation but in certainty. It rests on the unchanging character of God and the finished work of Christ. When a believer endures suffering with hope, It is not because they are blindly optimistic, but because they know the end of the story. The cross was not the end. The tomb was not the end. Resurrection came. Ascension came. And return will come. Our hope is secured in the unbreakable reality that the King reigns and that his promises never fail. This also raises a profound philosophical truth. If there is no eternal kingdom, then suffering is meaningless and sacrifice is foolish. If Christ is not risen, then Paul was right when he said, "Let us eat and drink." Without eternity, there is no reason to deny yourself, no reason to surrender, no reason to endure trials for Christ. But if he is risen, if his kingdom is real and everlasting, then everything changes. Every sacrifice has weight, every trial has purpose. Every act of obedience becomes an investment in eternity. Think of it this way: you could live for your own little kingdom, your career, your reputation, your possessions, and maybe you will succeed for a time. Maybe people will admire you. Maybe you will enjoy comfort. Maybe you will hold a temporary crown. But all of it will be stripped away at death. The grave levels every earthly ruler, every human accomplishment. But the one who lives for Christ, who lays down their crown in devotion to him, will rise again to receive a crown that death cannot touch. The grave may take your body, but it cannot take your reward. This is why the early believers could face persecution with such boldness. They were not naive. They knew the cost. They knew they might be beaten, imprisoned, or killed for their allegiance to Christ. But they also knew the crown that awaited them. They believed that to live is Christ and to die is gain. That kind of courage does not come from wishful thinking. It comes from unshakable hope in the eternal kingdom. And it is this same hope that must sustain us now. You will not remain devoted to Christ if your eyes are fixed only on what you can see. The trials of life will crush you if you do not lift your gaze beyond them. You must see the King, risen and reigning, and the promise of his kingdom yet to come. This vision of eternity is not an escape from reality. It is the truest reality that gives meaning to everything else. But here is the challenge: many live as if this world is all there is. Even professing Christians can fall into the trap of treating eternal hope as a distant idea rather than a present anchor. But if you truly believe that your King reigns eternally, then your priorities will shift. You will not cling so tightly to possessions. You will not live for human applause. You will not despair when trials come. You will endure because you know that everything surrendered for Christ will be returned 100-fold in his kingdom. So let me press this on your conscience. What crown are you pursuing? Is it the fading crown of worldly success or the imperishable crown that only Christ can give? Every day, you are investing your life in one kingdom or another. One will perish, the other will endure. One will leave you empty, the other will leave you satisfied forever. The crown that Christ offers is not earned by your merit, but secured by his sacrifice. Yet it is only given to those who bow the knee, who surrender in obedience, who remain faithful even through trials. This is the destiny of those who cry with their lives, not just their lips, "Long live the King." So let us not waste our lives chasing crowns that will wither. Let us fix our eyes on the eternal kingdom. Let us live in obedience no matter the cost. And let us endure with unshakable hope. Because in the end, every earthly kingdom will crumble, but the reign of Christ will stand forever. And those who remain loyal to him will share in his victory. Every crown in this world fades, but the crown given by Christ lasts for eternity. Choose carefully which one you live for.